You can hear me?
Well, I can
Do you
hear
wear it on?
I
Okay.
can hear you, but I don't have it on.
Index finger, press. We're going back. Let's see. All the way back to the time the children of Israel entered the land of Israel. What cruise ship were they on?
Yeah, let's see. They were on the Moses cut the sea, Royal cut the Red Sea
Okay.
cruise line. Yeah.
So we know that the children of Israel left Egypt. Egypt is in the south. We know that they were led all the way to where Saudi Arabia is today, because that's where the real Mount Sinai is. Did you know that? Even Paul says to the Galatians, Mount Sinai, which is in Arabia. There's a place called Jabal Oz. You better read about it because it's amazing. There's a whole ministry that a couple, that American couple that lived in Saudi and worked for an oil company there, they took a family trip and they stumbled into that place and they couldn't believe. Everything the Bible talked about throughout the description of the Exodus, they could see, including the rock that Moses hit and got split. And they named their ministry Split Rock Ministry. You need to check them out. Now, if that was only them, I would say, they probably, inhaled too much oil. But there's another guy, Dr. Kim, from Korea originally, who was a personal physician of one of the crown princes, giving him some remedy for his lower back pain. And in return, all he wanted is to have access to all places so he can tour because he's a Bible believer. He knows that this is part of what could have been Exodus. And he managed to get there, and it's amazing. Go to YouTube and click Dr. Kim Mount Sinai, and it's an interview to a Dutch TV channel, and phenomenal. So now, when you know that they went through Saudi, then they entered through Jordan, and then they crossed Mount Nebo, down to the Jordan Valley, crossed to the side of Canaan, took over Jericho, and camped in Gilgal, and had some excursions to some places until they moved all the way as a nation, and Joshua divided the land between the different tribes. And not before he warned them that this is a very tricky thing, because if they don't do what God is expecting them to do, he knows exactly what's going to happen to them. Now, side by side with, or simultaneously as the Israelites entered the land from the east, there's another group of people that entered the land from the west. These are the Philistines. The Philistines are not Arabs. They're not Palestinians. The Philistines are Greek. They came from the island of Kaftor, which is Crete of today, and they basically suffered from famine, and they looked for a better place, and what's best than this area, and so they started moving across the Mediterranean towards Canaan and Egypt. The Egyptians pushed them away, and they landed in Gaza, Ashdod, Ashkelon on the coast, and then started moving inland towards Ekron and Gath. Gath is where Goliath and his brothers were from. And then, of course, they moved. And when they came from the west, they brought with them new technology. The laser beam. No. Iron. Literally. Now think about it. The Israelites came all the way from Egypt. They came all the way from 40 years wandering the desert. They finally enter into the land, and they're predominantly agricultural society, which means they need some equipment. And what was the most available equipment at the time? What was the most available equipment?
Rocks.
No, as far as a metal. Bronze, exactly. Bronze. Now, bronze is a good metal, strong, but not as strong as iron. Just like the cell phones of 10 years ago are not as strong or not as, I guess, sophisticated as the ones today. So the Israelites are dealing with agriculture and they have some very old equipment, and the Philistines bring with them the technology of smelting iron, which requires high temperature and, of course, the right material. So they came to do business with the Israelites. It's very interesting because the Bible in 1 Samuel chapter 13 ends up the chapter with this. Verse 19, now there was no blacksmith to be found throughout all the land of Israel, for the Philistines said, lest the Hebrews make swords or spears. But all the Israelites would go down to the Philistines. So if the Israelites are on the mountains predominantly, they will go down to the Philistines, to the coast, where they are, to what? To sharpen each man's plowshare, mattock, axe, sickle, and the charge. What sharpens iron?
Iron.
So they need not only to buy stuff from the Philistines, but later on to sharpen it again after a few months. Just like Apple Store. I mean, you buy something from Apple and you need to buy from them everything else. That's smart. So the Philistines made sure that every few months, every family that ever bought any equipment would have to show up, hand its equipment, wait for a while, get it back for a certain fee. Fair enough. But this way, not only did the Philistines control the agriculture in the land of Israel, but also the fact that the Israelites will never be superior to them militarily. Because they made sure, lest the Hebrews make what? Swords and spears. They made sure the Hebrews will not have swords and spears. In fact, the only ones that they kind of allow them to have it are the king and his son. And that's why the Bible says, so it came about that on the day of battle, that there was neither sword nor spear found in the hand of any of the people who were with Saul and Jonathan, but they were found with Saul and Jonathan his son. So now we understand the Philistines contemplated or somehow planned a takeover, a hostile takeover. You know, the Philistines are, the Bible calls them Plishtim in Hebrew. Plishtim. Plishtim from the Hebrew word to invade, the invaders. Their name is a testimony of who they are also and what this whole thing is all about. They don't belong here. They're not supposed to be here. They invaded into here, and you better get rid of them, because if you don't, guess what?
They're going to take over.
They'll take over. I want to take you back to Genesis chapter 4. And in Genesis chapter 4, God is warning Cain and says to him in verse 7, he says to Cain, verse 6, why are you so angry? Why has your countenance fallen? And then verse 7, if you do well, will you not be accepted? And if you do not do well, look what he says. Sin lies at the door, and its desire is for you, but you should rule over it. I always liken the Philistines to sin, that either you rule over and kick out, or it will
Rule you.
rule you. And sure enough, when you entertain sin, it'll rule you. Rule you so much so that you will live in fear your whole life, lest somebody finds out. So now we have an issue where the Philistines are in the land, the Israelites are in the land, the Philistines are advancing from the coast, the Israelites are all over the mountains, and the day came when the Philistines decided, okay, today is the day where we are presenting before the Israelites their two options. Either you surrender and be our slaves, or you try to beat us. And guess what? We've got some giants. And guess what? We're gonna send our big giant Goliath to the field. And you're gonna send your champion. And let's see whose champion is going to win. And whoever's champion will win will rule over the others. So the Israelites and the Philistines drew battle lines. And the Bible says, now come the location where we are. The Bible says that the battle arrays, the lines were very, very clear. First of all, I want you all to turn around and see nothing. Because there's a bush standing right there. But behind that bush, there's that hill with that single tree standing there that Elah talked about earlier. And you will be able to see it from a different angle shortly. I'm just telling you about it right now because we're still in the shade. That's Azekah. Azekah. Then I want you to see another hill. Right in front of you, there's a bush. You can't see anything. Right beyond it is a place called Soko. The Bible says that both Soko and Azekah were part of the tribe of Judah. However, the Philistines that advanced from the coast, from Ashdod, Ashkelon, and Gaza, and inlands, Ekron and Gath, they took over Soko as well as Azekah. They took over. They situated soldiers there, and they also controlled everything. Israelites came all the way from the mountains of Judah. See the far mountains? And they encamped in this range right here, behind you. So they are on one side, the Philistines are on the other side, and the valley that you're about to see in a few seconds is the valley. Are you ready? Let's go. Let's see.